Hey everybody, my name is Michelle and in this video I'm going to share with you my tips to read more. So how you can finish more books, how you can make more time for reading, basically how you can read more in general. I personally tend to read a lot because I love reading very much and I'm very happy with the sort of reading flow that I'm now in and the reading pace that I now have. And over the years I've acquired some tips and tricks to read more if I want to, and yeah, I just wanted to share those with you. Of course, you should never feel pressured to read more if you don't want to. This is all about finding the reading pace that you're happy with, and if you want to pick up that reading pace, then hopefully this video can be helpful for you. I also know that there are a lot of similar videos out there like this, and I hope I have some tips that you might not have heard yet that are a bit more original. And yeah, basically let's just get started with this video and then I'm going to teach you how to read more. My first tip would be to find out what kind of reader you are and what works for you. So I know that some people really like it when they have reading goals. So they have like a reading goal on Goodreads, they make TBRs every month and they specifically pick out the books that they want to read. And in that way they manage to read more. But other people might feel very pressured with that, so they don't like to do that. So that's really up to you to find out what works for you. Same thing goes for if you want to read multiple books at once, because for some people that really works. They want to read multiple books so they can switch between them and never get bored and can always read the book that they're feeling most attracted to at that time. But I personally really love to read only one book at a time because I can focus more on that one book and I don't feel distracted by all those other books that I've started and that I haven't finished yet. So those are some things that are different for everybody, and that's why my tip would be to look at yourself and find out what works for me. Do I want to make to-do lists? Do I want to make TBRs? Do I want to pick my books completely based on my reading mood at the moment? That's something I cannot decide for you because you really have to find out what works with your reading tastes and with your reading habits. But no matter what kind of reader you are, if you want to read more, then my second tip would be to make reading a priority. Of course, it should never be a task that you're not looking forward to, because then it's not fun. But if you're watching this video, I'm assuming that you want to read more and that reading is something that you love to do. And if you want to achieve that, I would definitely say that making it a priority over other things that you want to do in your free time is definitely something that can be very important. Again, not that your entire life should only consist of reading, but if you don't want to make reading a priority, that's completely fine. That's completely up to you, but then you probably don't really want to read more, because yeah, those two things sort of go hand in hand, I think. And that brings me to my third tip, and that would be to dedicate time to reading and plan standard reading moments during the day. For me personally, I always read before I go to sleep at night. I feel that's a very popular one for a lot of people. For me, it's the perfect way to sort of end my day, to read some of my book, and then I always do that. It's always there in my daily schedule, and in that way I don't really think about it too much. It's just something that I do almost on automatic pilot, and yeah, also in that way I manage to read something at least every day. I have some other reading moments during the day, but the one before I go to sleep at night is a standard one, and yeah, you can always do that, or you can also plan a moment during the morning or after your lunch break, whatever works for you. But having a standard moment during the day that you dedicate to reading makes it a lot easier to read more, because if you read something every day, it will surprise you how many books you can read and how much you can actually read if it's only, you know, maybe 30 minutes every day, or maybe even less. If you read 15 minutes every day, that's definitely quite a lot, and that's definitely something that can help you to read more. Then my next piece of advice is something I'm very much working on currently, and that is to go less on social media. Social media, of course, is amazing because it makes it possible to connect with other people, talk with other people about your interests and make friends. So I would never say that you have to cut social media completely out of your life. But overall, I do think that a lot of us are quite addicted to checking our phones, checking Twitter, Instagram and Facebook. And once you start to think about it, there's a lot of time during the day that you actually spend just picking up your phone and scrolling through Instagram, just watching pictures, watching things that actually don't really maybe not interest you all that much. And not only does social media take up a lot of your time, it also really messes with your headspace and your concentration. Because with social media we get so many pieces of information in a very short amount of time. You see a lot of pictures, a lot of tweets, short pieces of text that really messes with your concentration, because there's so many different things that you have to switch between in a short amount of time. And that is research that says that social media and all those things can mess with your ability to read on a deeper level. And that's something I very much think is happening with me, because when I was younger, before social media, I read so much more. I already read a lot now, but when I make an effort to cut down my social media time, I noticed that I definitely read a lot more. And I know it might be hard to cut back on social media, because we all know FOMO, we all know fear of missing out. We want to know what is happening every moment of every day. We don't want to miss a thing, but trust me, in the end you don't miss that much if you only go on social media during a certain time of the day. For example, you can disable your social media during the day, and then after dinner you can activate it again and then check all your things, and then deactivate it again and watch it again the next day. So maybe just as which you plan dedicated time for reading, you can also plan some dedicated time for social media, and that way you're not caught up in the addiction of checking updates basically every second of the day. And then something what I also think is important, and that somehow relates to like social media and everything, is to allow yourself to be bored every once in a while. So with this I mean, whenever we take a break from reading or from school, we tend to grab our phones and check social media. And I've read a book called Focus Aan Uit by Mark Tichelaar, and he says that it's actually not a break, because we still get new information into our heads. So checking your phone on Instagram or messages or whatever only makes your head busier and more tired. So something that is very important for your headspace, but also your concentration and your focus, is to allow yourself to be bored every once in a while and just take a break and, for example, just stare and let your mind wander for a couple of minutes. It's also a good idea to go for a walk or do some exercise, put on some music and go crazy, dance for a couple of minutes. Things like that are actually really good for your brain and good for your concentration. And of course that will help you to maybe read more. We live in a world where everything is going so fast and there is so much information and things. We are always reading and picking up more and seeing things, hearing things, pieces of news, and that really makes your brain very tired. So that is something that I think might be very important if you want to read more and if you want to have a better headspace to read more, is allow yourself to be bored every once in a while. If you take a reading break, don't go on your phone, because it distracts you and it also messes with your concentration. So yeah. Allow yourself to be bored every once in a while. I think it feels counterproductive, because we have the tendency to be always productive and to always do something, but just let your mind wander every once in a while and do nothing. I personally always do it when I'm on public transport. I used to either go on my phone or read, but now I just tend to stare out of the window and just let my head go free, and yeah, for me it really works. And then on the subject of concentration, my next tip would be to build up your concentration. So if you barely read anything, it might be a challenge to go from nothing to reading an hour every day. That might be too big of a step at once. Something that might work for you is to build it up in little steps. So first of all, you're going to read 10 minutes every evening, or whatever time you have dedicated to reading. 10 minutes really isn't a long time. I guess that most people can spare 10 minutes every day just for reading. You do that for a week, and then the next week you're going to maybe extend it to 15 minutes, and then the next week to 20 minutes. Make a schedule if that works for you, and try to slowly build up your concentration until you're at the point that you're happy with. If 10 minutes is already something you're happy with, then that's great. Then you leave it at that. If you want to build it up to 30 minutes, then you go till there. If you want to go till an hour, then do that. Feel free to do that, but your concentration is like a muscle. It needs to be trained properly to work. And also I like to think that tiny steps like 5 minutes more every week makes it a lot more approachable, because then it doesn't look like a daunting test. Because of course, like 10 minutes every day, that's fine. Most people can do that. It doesn't sound scary, it doesn't sound intimidating, and then next 5 minutes more, that's also not too bad. So if you're doing it in tiny steps, then I think in a while you might notice that you can read more, because you have built up the habit of reading every day, and then up till the point that you're happy with. For me, it's like, I guess, half an hour a day at least, sometimes 45 minutes or an hour. I guess that was it for all my tips on concentration. Now I have a couple of more practical ones. An obvious one that a lot of people often say in these kinds of videos is to carry a book with you always. I have to admit, I don't personally always do that. I carry a book with me when I know that there is going to be a time that I can read, but as I mentioned before, when I'm on public transportation, I don't read anymore. I just tend to let my mind wander and have a mind break. But for some people who tend to be very active in their heads all the time, or who just really like to have a book with them, it can help you to read more, because if you have to wait a longer time than just, you know, a couple of minutes, then it's nice to have a book instead of your phone for social media. So carrying a book with you might help to read more. At least you have the possibility to read instead of doing something else. But again, I do want to emphasize that just doing nothing for a couple of minutes is also still very, very good for reading more in the long run. But that's completely up to you. For some people, it helps to carry a book with them. For some people, it doesn't. So yeah, again, that is something you have to figure out for yourself. Next up, we also have the use of audiobooks and ebooks. First of all, ebooks. I do have an e-reader. I don't use it that much, but if I do take a book with me, it's usually in the form of my e-reader and like with an ebook. I have quite a lot of ebooks in my library, so that's really nice that you always have more than one book with you. That's of course very much one of the pros of an e-reader. And yeah, I really love to use it. Not every day, not on a daily basis, but on trips, or if I have a longer journey, then an e-reader is great. But something that is an absolute lifesaver for me is the use of audiobooks. I listen to audiobooks on a daily basis. I love listening to them, and since I've started listening to audiobooks, I've been reading so much more. Because of audiobooks, I can finish so many more books, and I really love it. What is nice about listening to a book is that you can do it whilst you are doing other things. For me, I always listen to my audiobook during the morning, like my morning routine. So when I'm making breakfast, when I'm getting dressed and doing my makeup, those are things that don't require, you know, a lot of concentration, a lot of headspace. So those times are very suitable for me to listen to an audiobook. I also listen to them when I'm cleaning or tidying things up, because again, those are things that don't require a lot of your concentration. So it's very nice to then sort of divide your headspace between doing your simple task and listening to your audiobook. Again, I know audiobooks don't work for everybody. Some people think they take too much of their concentration and they can't focus on them and they miss parts of the story. I would also recommend with audiobooks really easily getting used to them. When I first started listening to audiobooks, I listened to maybe 1 or 2 a month, and now I listen to like 4 or 5 a month. So that's something I've also built up. Find out if audiobooks work for you, and if you want to listen to audiobooks, find out which moments of the day are good moments for you to listen to your audiobook. I personally really love them. They really work for me. I figured out a system where I can listen to audiobooks on a daily basis, and yeah, again, that is something you have to figure out for yourself and try and see what works and what doesn't. And then my final tip on how to read more is to make yourself excited. Reading is fun. You love reading, at least I think you do if you're watching this video. For me, I tend to get really excited about reading more if I watch TBR videos and wrap-ups, because then I have all these new book recommendations that I want to read immediately. But of course you have to be careful that you don't fall down the rabbit hole of watching too much booktube and then you don't get to reading at all. So I know that's also sometimes a bit of a problem. But still, talking with friends about books, watching videos about books, participating in readathons, make yourself excited. Or even just stand before your bookshelves and go through your books one by one, your unread books, and think about why you bought them, why they made you excited, why you want to read them. Reading is fun, and I'm guessing that if you want to read more, it's because you want to spend more time reading, because you enjoy that. And reminding yourself of that every once in a while might help to get back your motivation. And yeah, it's just something that I love to do and get myself excited, because I love reading so much, and that is basically the best tip I can give you to read more is to love reading, because if you don't love it, you're not going to read more because you don't like doing it. But it's my favorite hobby and one of my favorite ways to pass my time. So yeah, that is pretty much it for all I can tell you about how to read more. This was it for this video, and I really hope it's going to be useful to you if you want to read more, and maybe give you some tips or tricks. And yeah, please let me know if anything of these things is going to be useful to you down below in the comments. Also share your tips on how to read more so other people can benefit from it. Yeah, I would love to hear. But this was it now for this video, and I really hope you enjoyed this video. And if you did, maybe go subscribe or give it a thumbs up, because as always I would really appreciate that. And hopefully I will see you again very soon in my next video. Bye!